Every year, the Johnson family hosted their annual holiday dinner, a grand affair filled with laughter, tradition, and an overwhelming sense of togetherness. For Maya, a kind-hearted black woman married to Marcus, these gatherings were always bittersweet. On one hand, she loved seeing how close-knit his family was. On the other hand, something about the dinners never sat right with her. Literally. Maya had been part of the Johnson family for 3 years now, but every time she attended their holiday feast, she would feel unwell afterward. At first, she thought it was just nerves. After all, being the only person of color in a predominantly white household came with its own set of challenges. She often felt like she was walking on eggshells, trying hard to fit into traditions that didn't quite feel like hers. But as the years went by, the pattern became impossible to ignore. It started subtly. A headache here, a queasy stomach there. By the second year, things escalated. Within hours of eating at the dinner table, Maya found herself doubled over in discomfort, retching uncontrollably. Marcus assured her it must have been food poisoning or some random bug, but deep down, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. The most recent dinner had left her completely drained. As everyone laughed around the dining table, Maya tried her best to enjoy the meal. She politely nibbled on the dishes laid out before her. Creamy mashed potatoes, roasted turkey glazed with herbs, buttery green beans, and sweet potato casserole topped with marshmallows. Each bite tasted delicious, yet within minutes of finishing her plate, she began to feel strange. Her chest tightened, her throat burned slightly, and soon enough, the familiar wave of nausea hit her again. Marcus noticed her discomfort and suggested they leave early. Back home, Maya spent the rest of the evening curled up on the couch, sipping ginger tea while Marcus rubbed her back. "Maybe you're allergic to something," he said gently, though his tone carried traces of doubt. He wanted to believe it wasn't intentional, that no one in his family would ever do anything to harm her. Still, Maya couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it. Over the next few days, Maya replayed the events of the dinner in her mind. She remembered the way Marcus's mother, Evelyn, watched her closely as she served herself from the buffet. Scene. There was nothing overtly hostile about her gaze, but it made Maya uneasy nonetheless. And then there was Aunt Susan, who insisted Maya try just a little bit of everything even when Maya hesitated, saying she wasn't particularly hungry. Was it paranoia creeping in? Or was there truly something amiss? What troubled Maya most was the isolation she felt during these dinners. While everyone else seemed to bond effortlessly over shared memories and inside jokes, Maya struggled to find her place. Conversations about childhood vacations or favorite recipes rarely included her, leaving her feeling like an outsider looking in. This emotional distance only amplified her physical symptoms, making each gathering harder to endure. Despite everything, Maya refused to let bitterness take root. She cared deeply for Marcus and genuinely wanted to build bridges with his family. Yet, the recurring illness gnawed at her confidence. Something had to change, not just for her sake, but for the sake of preserving the relationship she cherished so much. As the next holiday season approached, Maya decided to take matters into her own hands. If attending the dinners meant risking her health, perhaps bringing her own dish could offer both protection and a chance to connect with the family in a new way. Little did she know this small act of self-preservation would uncover secrets far deeper than she ever imagined. As the next holiday season drew closer, Maya found herself torn between excitement and dread. On one hand, she loved spending time with Marcus and celebrating their life together. On the other hand, the thought of another uncomfortable and possibly harmful dinner at his parents' house filled her with anxiety. Determined to take control of the situation, Maya came up with a plan. This year, instead of relying solely on the dishes prepared by Marcus's family, she would bring her own contribution to the meal. Maya spent hours brainstorming what dish to prepare. It needed to be something meaningful yet approachable, a way to share a piece of her culture while also ensuring she had something safe to eat. After much deliberation, she decided on jollof rice, a flavorful West African dish that reminded her of home. The vibrant red color from the tomato stew, the aromatic spices, and the fluffy texture of the rice always brought warmth to her heart. Plus, it was a crowd pleaser. Surely even the Johnsons would appreciate it. Or so she hoped. While preparing. For the dinner, Maya couldn't shake off the lingering doubts in her mind. Was she overreacting? Could her recurring illnesses really be chalked up to allergies or coincidence? Or was there something more sinister at play? She tried to push these thoughts aside, reminding herself that assuming the worst wouldn't help anyone. Still, the memory of Evelyn's watchful eyes and Aunt Susan's persistent urging haunted her. Marcus noticed Maya's quiet determination as she worked in the kitchen the day before the dinner. He admired her resilience but couldn't ignore the worry etched on her face. "Are you sure about this?" he asked cautiously, leaning against the counter while she stirred the pot of simmering tomatoes. "I have to try," Maya replied softly, glancing up at him. "I can't keep going through this every year, Marcus. If bringing my own dish helps me feel better and maybe even opens the door to connecting with your family, then it's worth it." Marcus nodded, though unease flickered in his expression. Like Maya, he wanted to believe the best about his family, but he couldn't deny that subtle tensions existed, especially when it came to topics like race and cultural differences. His mother, Evelyn, often made comments about how different Maya's upbringing must have been compared to theirs. Though she claimed it was just curiosity, Marcus knew those remarks sometimes stung. The morning of the dinner arrived, and Maya packed the jollof rice carefully into a large casserole dish, wrapping it snugly in foil. As they drove to the Johnsons' house, she rehearsed what she would say when presenting the dish. Would they welcome it warmly, or would they see it as an intrusion on their tightly held traditions? When they arrived, the familiar sights and smells greeted them. Twinkling lights strung across the living room, the scent of roasted turkey wafting through the air, and the sound of laughter echoing from the dining room. Evelyn greeted them at the door with her usual polite smile, though Maya detected a hint of stiffness in her tone. "Oh, you've brought something?" Evelyn said, eyeing the covered dish in Maya's hands. "Yes, I thought it might be nice to share a dish from my culture," Maya explained brightly, hoping her nervousness didn't show. "It's called jollof rice. I hope everyone likes it." Evelyn forced a smile and gestured toward the kitchen. "Well, let's get it set up then." Her words were cordial, but the lack of enthusiasm was palpable. Maya exchanged a glance with Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod. As Maya arranged the jollof rice alongside the other dishes, she couldn't help but notice the reactions around her. Some family members peered curiously at the bright red rice, while others seemed indifferent. Aunt Susan wrinkled her nose slightly but said nothing. Meanwhile, Cousin Emily leaned in closer, genuinely intrigued. "Wow, this looks amazing," she exclaimed. "What's in it?" Grateful for the positive response, Maya began explaining the ingredients and the significance of the dish. For a brief moment, she felt a spark of connection, a rare occurrence during these dinners. Maybe this was a step in the right direction. But as everyone settled down to eat, Maya remained vigilant. She stuck mostly to her jollof rice, avoiding the other dishes as much as possible. Despite her efforts to stay cheerful, unease lingered in the back of her mind. What if her precautions weren't enough? And why did she still feel so out of place even after trying so hard to bridge the gap? Little did Maya know, the answers to her questions were closer than she realized, and hidden within the very meal sitting on the table. The dining room buzzed with chatter as the Johnson family dug into the feast spread before them. Maya sat, quietly, observing the scene while carefully sticking to her jollof rice. Though she had hoped bringing her own dish would ease some of her anxiety, the weight of unanswered questions still pressed heavily on her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As plates were passed around and forks clinked against china, Maya noticed subtle reactions to her contribution. Cousin Emily eagerly scooped a generous helping of jollof rice onto her plate, clearly enjoying it. Others, however, hesitated. Marcus's Father Richard gave the dish a cursory glance before moving on without trying it. Evelyn, ever the hostess, offered polite praise but didn't touch it herself. "It smells wonderful, dear," she said with a tight smile, though her tone lacked sincerity. Maya tried not to let their lukewarm reception bother her. Instead, she focused on engaging with those who showed genuine interest. When Emily asked more about the spices used in the dish, Maya happily explained how cumin, thyme, and bay leaves blended together to create its rich flavor. For a brief moment, she felt seen and appreciated, a rare experience at these gatherings. But just as she began to relax, an unsettling incident occurred. As Aunt Susan reached for the bowl of green beans, her hand brushed against Maya's arm. Startled, Maya looked up to see Susan quickly withdrawing her hand, almost as if she hadn't meant to touch her. There was no apology, only a fleeting expression of discomfort that made Maya's stomach churn, not from illness this time, but from unease. Later, as dessert was served, Maya excused herself to use the restroom. On her way back, she overheard fragments of conversation drifting from the kitchen. Curiosity got the better of her, and she slowed her pace, listening intently. Strange, isn't it? Evelyn's voice carried through the crack in the door. Every year, she brings something different now. First, it was that fruit salad last Thanksgiving. Then those little pastries at Christmas. Now this. She's probably just trying too hard. Another voice, likely Aunt Susan, replied dismissively. Honestly, I don't know why we have to cater to all these differences. Maya froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Differences? Was that what they thought of her? That she was forcing her culture onto their traditions? She wanted to step inside and defend herself, to explain that her intentions were never about disruption, but fear rooted her feet to the spot. What good would arguing do? They might deny everything or accuse her of being overly sensitive. Instead, Maya retreated silently to the dining room, where she forced a smile and resumed eating. But the warmth she had briefly felt earlier evaporated completely. Her mind raced, with thoughts of exclusion and judgment. Was this why she always felt so out of place? Did they resent her presence altogether? That night, after returning home, Maya lay awake beside Marcus, replaying the evening in her mind. Did you notice anything weird tonight? She finally asked, breaking the silence. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Weird how? She hesitated, unsure how much to share. Just people acting strange around my food. And when I went to the bathroom, I overheard your mom and Aunt Susan talking. They sounded annoyed by the things I bring. Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, Maya, I know my family can be difficult sometimes, but I'm sure it's not personal. Maybe they're just not used to new traditions. His words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened Maya's frustration. Not personal? How could it not be personal, when every action she took seemed to invite scrutiny? Determined to find clarity, Maya decided to investigate further. If her illnesses at previous dinners weren't coincidences, and if her contributions truly bothered them, then perhaps there was more to uncover beneath the surface. The next day, she called her best friend Tasha, who worked as a nurse. I need your help, Maya confessed during their phone call. Is there any way someone could tamper with food without anyone noticing? Tasha paused, sensing the gravity of Maya's question. Well, certain allergens or irritants are easy to hide. Why? Do you think something like that happened? Maya hesitated before answering. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to wonder. With Tasha's guidance, Maya resolved to take matters into her own hands. The upcoming holiday dinner would be different, not just because of the dishes she brought, but because she planned to confront the truth head-on. The days leading up to the next holiday dinner were filled with quiet determination for Maya. Armed with Tasha's advice, she began preparing not just a dish, but also a plan to uncover the truth. If someone in Marcus's family had been tampering with her food, she needed proof, and more importantly, she needed answers. Maya decided to bake sweet potato pie, a dessert that felt both familiar and comforting. It was a dish she knew well, one that carried memories of her grandmother teaching her how to roll out the crust perfectly. But this time, she approached it differently. Following Tasha's suggestion, Maya purchased clear, tamper-proof containers to store the pie after baking. She also sprinkled a tiny amount of harmless blue food coloring into the filling, a trick Tasha assured her would reveal if anyone added anything unusual without her knowledge. On the morning of the dinner, Maya carefully packed the pie in its container, ensuring the seal remained intact. As they drove to the Johnsons' house, Marcus glanced at her nervously. "You're really going through with this?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. "I have to," Maya replied firmly. "I can't keep wondering what's happening behind my back. If nothing's wrong, then great, but if there is, I need to know." Marcus sighed, torn between loyalty to his wife and his family. "Just promise me you'll be careful. I don't want things to escalate unnecessarily." Maya nodded, though she couldn't shake the knot of tension in her stomach. When they arrived, the scene was much like every other year. Warm hugs from relatives, the smell of roasted meats and spices wafting through the air, and Evelyn bustling around the kitchen. Maya set her pie on the counter, making sure everyone saw the sealed container. "This is my contribution today," she announced brightly. "Sweet potato pie, my grandmother's recipe." Evelyn raised an eyebrow but said nothing, while Aunt Susan muttered under her breath about all these new additions. Maya ignored them, focusing instead on maintaining her composure. Throughout the meal, she kept a close eye on the pie, watching as it sat untouched during the main course. When dessert was finally served, Maya noticed something peculiar. Evelyn picked up the container, hesitated for a moment, and then handed it to Marcus to slice. "Why don't you cut this for us, dear?" she suggested, her tone overly casual. Marcus complied, unaware of the significance of the moment. As slices of pie were passed around, Maya observed closely. Most of the family took small portions, except for Aunt Susan, who declined altogether. "I'm full," she said dismissively, pushing her plate away. Maya frowned, recalling how Susan had always encouraged her to try everything in previous years. Something didn't add up. After everyone finished eating, Maya excused herself to check the pie container. To her dismay, the tamper-proof seal had been broken, not by accident but deliberately. Her heart sank as she examined the edges of the plastic lid, which showed faint scratches. Someone had opened it. She returned to the dining room, her mind racing. Who could have done this and why? Determined to get answers, Maya approached Evelyn later that evening when the crowd thinned out. "Thank you for letting me bring the pie," she said politely, though her voice carried a hint of steel. "But I noticed the seal on the container was broken. Do you know anything about that?" Evelyn stiffened, caught off guard by the question. "Oh, I wouldn't know anything about seals or containers," she replied curtly. "Perhaps it happened during transport." Maya pressed gently, unwilling to let the matter drop. "It's strange, though. The seal was designed specifically to prevent tampering. Did anyone mention needing to open it earlier?" Before Evelyn could respond, Aunt Susan interjected sharply. "Honestly, Maya, must we scrutinize every little detail? You're making such a fuss over nothing." Her words stung, but Maya refused to back down. She smiled tightly. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want to understand what's going on. That's all." Later that night, as Maya and Marcus drove home, she stared out the window, lost in thought. The broken seal confirmed her suspicions. Someone in his family had tampered with her food. But why? Was it mere prejudice or something deeper? Back at home, Maya retrieved a piece of the leftover pie and examined it under bright light. There, barely visible against the orange filling, were faint traces of white powder where the blue dye had reacted. Whatever it wasn't supposed to be there. With newfound resolve, Maya vowed to confront the truth once and for all. This wasn't just about her health anymore. It was about standing up for herself and demanding respect. The discovery of the tampered pie left Maya with a mix of anger, sadness, and determination. She couldn't ignore what she had uncovered anymore. It wasn't paranoia or coincidence. Someone in Marcus's family had deliberately interfered with her food, and now she needed answers. But how could she confront them without causing an outright explosion? The thought weighed heavily on her as she lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. The next morning, Maya decided to take a calculated approach. She called Tasha again, sharing her findings about the white powder in the O. Percy, do you think you could help me identify it? She asked hesitantly. Tasha agreed, promising to discreetly analyze the sample using her connections at work. In the meantime, Maya resolved to gather more information directly from the Johnsons themselves, starting with Evelyn. A few days later, Maya invited Evelyn over for coffee under the pretense of discussing upcoming family events. It was a risky move, but Maya knew Evelyn often spoke freely when she felt in control. As they sat across from each other at the kitchen table, sipping steaming mugs of coffee, Maya broached the subject carefully. "I've been thinking a lot about our holiday dinners," Maya began, keeping her tone light. "I love being part of your traditions, but sometimes I feel like I don't quite fit in. Does anyone else ever mention that?" Evelyn set her mug down, studying Maya with a guarded expression. "What do you mean by fit in?" she asked, cautiously. Maya leaned forward slightly, choosing her words carefully. "Well, I bring dishes that are important to me, hoping to share a piece of my culture. But lately, I've noticed some resistance, like the pie I brought last week. The seal was broken and something seemed off about it." Evelyn stiffened visibly, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Are you accusing someone of tampering with your food?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "No, not exactly," Maya replied calmly, though her heart raced. "I'm just trying to understand why certain things happen. For example, Aunt Susan seemed uncomfortable eating my pie, and then there's how I always end up feeling sick after these dinners. It makes me wonder if maybe someone doesn't want me here." Evelyn's face flushed red, and for a moment she looked like she might deny everything. But instead she sighed deeply, avoiding eye contact. "It's complicated, Maya," she admitted reluctantly. "Some people struggle with change. They worry that bringing in new traditions might overshadow ours. But is that really why?" Maya pressed gently, sensing Evelyn was holding back. "Or is it because of who I am?" Evelyn hesitated, clearly conflicted. Finally she spoke, in a low voice. "There are opinions in this family that aren't easy to address. Some of us worry that you're too different, that you might influence Marcus in ways we don't understand. We never meant for it to go this far, but—" Her words trailed off, leaving Maya stunned. Different? That was the root of all this. Tension? She felt a surge of frustration and pity. How could they reduce her identity to something so shallow? Before Maya could respond, Marcus walked into the kitchen, having returned home unexpectedly early. Seeing the tense atmosphere, he frowned. "What's going on here?" Evelyn quickly stood up, smoothing her dress. "Nothing, dear. Just a little chat between women." With that, she hurried out of the house, leaving Maya and Marcus alone. "What was that about?" Marcus asked, concern etched on his face. Maya took a deep breath, deciding it was time to come clean. "Your mom just confirmed what I've suspected for a while. Someone in your family has been tampering with my food, probably to make me feel unwelcome." Marcus stared at her, disbelief written all over his features. "Are you sure? My family wouldn't—" "Think about it, Marcus," Maya interrupted, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "Every year I get sick after your dinners. This isn't a coincidence, and now with the pie, I have proof." Marcus sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelation. He wanted to defend his family, but deep down, he knew Maya was right. Her evidence was undeniable, and the behavior of his relatives suddenly made horrifying sense. Determined to support her, Marcus promised to speak with his family about their actions. But Maya knew this wasn't just about one conversation. It was about addressing years of subtle prejudice and exclusion. For the first time, however, she felt empowered. If the Johnsons refused to accept her fully, then she would find strength in standing firm. The days following Maya's confrontation with Evelyn were tense, to say the least. Marcus had promised to address the issue with his family, but progress was slow and fraught with resistance. When he finally gathered the courage to bring it up during a private conversation with his mother, Evelyn responded with defensiveness rather than remorse. "You're letting her turn you against us." Evelyn snapped, her voice sharp with accusation. "Maya's making wild claims because she wants attention. She doesn't understand how much we've tried to include her. Marcus sighed, feeling caught between two worlds. Mom, this isn't about attention. She found evidence, real proof, that someone tampered with her food. How can you explain that? Evelyn hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. After a long pause, she muttered, Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. People worry about allergies or unfamiliar foods. It doesn't mean anyone intended harm. Her evasive response only deepened Marcus's frustration. He realized then that confronting his family wouldn't be enough. They weren't ready to take responsibility for their actions. Worse still, they seemed determined to downplay the severity of what had happened. For Maya, this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of exclusion and disrespect. And Marcus knew he couldn't stand idly by while his wife continued to suffer. Meanwhile, Maya prepared for the next holiday dinner with renewed resolve. This time, she wasn't going to play defense. She would go on the offensive. Tasha had confirmed her suspicions. The white powder found in the pie contained traces of an ingredient known to cause nausea and discomfort if consumed in small amounts. Armed with this knowledge, Maya decided to hold a meeting before the dinner. A calm but firm discussion where she could present her findings and demand accountability. On the day of the gathering, Maya arrived early, carrying not only her dish, but also printed copies of Tasha's analysis. As the family trickled into the living room, she stood near the fireplace, her posture confident despite the storm brewing inside her. Marcus sat beside her, offering silent support as murmurs of confusion rippled through the room. "What's all this about?" Richard asked gruffly, glancing at the papers in Maya's hands. Maya took a deep breath, addressing the group directly. "I called this meeting because I need answers, and so does everyone else. Over the years, I've felt unwelcome at these dinners, but I told myself it was my imagination or cultural differences. Then I started getting sick after every meal. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but now I know better." She held up one of the printouts, pointing to the highlighted section detailing the foreign substance in her pie. "This is proof that someone tampered with my food. Not once, but multiple times. I brought something important to me, hoping to share a piece of who I am. Instead, someone saw it as a threat and acted accordingly." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Aunt Susan shifted uncomfortably in her seat, avoiding eye contact, while Evelyn crossed her arms tightly, her jaw clenched. Finally, Cousin Emily spoke up, her voice trembling. "Are you saying someone did this on purpose?" "Yes," Maya replied firmly. "And I think we all know who." All eyes turned to Evelyn and Aunt Susan, whose expressions shifted from shock to guilt. Evelyn opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. Aunt Susan buried her face in her hands, visibly shaken. Seeing their reactions, Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady. "If we don't acknowledge this, nothing will change. Maya deserves respect, not sabotage or prejudice. We're supposed to be a family." For the first time, there was no denial, no excuses. The truth lay bare in front of them, impossible to ignore. Maya felt a mix of relief and sadness. While exposing the truth was necessary, it didn't erase the pain she'd endured. As the evening wore on, some family members began apologizing sincerely, though others remained distant. Maya accepted their apologies cautiously, knowing trust would take time to rebuild. Still, one thing was clear. She had reclaimed her power and her place at the table. The aftermath of Maya's revelation brought both healing and change, though not without its challenges. For weeks after the holiday dinner, the Johnson household was quieter than usual. Conversations that once flowed effortlessly now carried an undercurrent of tension. Some family members, like Cousin Emily and Richard, made genuine efforts to repair their relationship with Maya, apologizing repeatedly and asking how they could do better. Others, however, remained distant, particularly Evelyn and Aunt Susan, who struggled to reconcile their actions with the reality of what they had done. Maya appreciated the sincere apologies, but knew forgiveness wouldn't come easily. Trust wasn't something she could simply hand over. It had to be earned through consistent effort. She decided to set boundaries moving forward, making it clear that while she valued her connection to Marcus's family, she wouldn't tolerate any further disrespect or exclusion. To her surprise, Marcus fully supported her decision, even encouraging her to prioritize her well-being above keeping the peace. One evening, as Maya and Marcus sat together on the couch at home, he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You've changed things for the better," he said softly. "Not just for you, but for everyone. My family needed this wake-up call." Maya smiled faintly, leaning into his shoulder. "I didn't want it to come to this. But I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I deserve to feel safe and respected." Marcus nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "And you will. We'll figure it out together." Over time, small signs of progress began to emerge. Evelyn, though still reserved, started inviting Maya to help plan future dinners, a gesture meant to bridge the gap between them. At first, Maya hesitated, unsure if she could trust Evelyn's intentions. But with Marcus by her side, she agreed to participate, seeing it as an opportunity to reshape traditions in a way that included everyone. For the next gathering, Maya suggested a potluck-style meal, where each person contributed a dish meaningful to them. The idea was met with mixed reactions, but eventually the family embraced it. On the day of the event, the dining table was filled with a diverse array of foods, from Evelyn's classic green bean casserole to Aunt Susan's apple crisp, and even Cousin Emily's experimental vegan lasagna. Maya brought another cherished recipe from her childhood: fried plantains, golden and sweet, served alongside her jollof rice. As the family gathered around the table, Maya felt a sense of hope she hadn't experienced before. Conversations about the dishes sparked curiosity and connection, allowing people to share stories and memories tied to their food. Even Evelyn seemed more relaxed, complimenting the plantains and asking Maya about their preparation. After dinner, Marcus raised his glass for a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, looking at Maya with pride, "and to learning from our mistakes so we can grow closer as a family." The room echoed with murmurs of agreement, and for the first time in years, Maya truly felt included. It wasn't perfect, there were still moments of awkwardness and lingering tension, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, Maya reflected on her journey. She realized that standing up for herself hadn't just been about confronting prejudice. It had also been about reclaiming her identity and finding strength in vulnerability. By sharing her culture and insisting on respect, she had opened doors that had long been closed, not just for herself, but for others who might have felt excluded too. Though the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, Maya faced it with confidence. She had proven that love, understanding, and resilience could overcome even the deepest divides. And as she looked around at the faces of those she cared about, she knew they were all capable of growth, if they chose to embrace it. This final part wraps up the story with resolution, hope, and a message of growth and inclusion. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments or additional details.